The solo for this is all transcribed. It's all over on the Patreon channel. So if you want the solo exactly as it's played, you can get the tab, the complete tab, over on the Patreon channel. There's loads of stuff on there, only £2.50 a month. Really worth it. Check that out. Scales suck, chord tones rule. Howdy folks. The solo you saw at the start, I pretty much wasn't thinking pentatonic shapes at all over that. Right at the start there was a little bit of a major pentatonic scale, and right at the end there was a little bit of a minor pentatonic scale. But for the most part, the middle section, that is 11 bars, over none of that was I thinking pentatonic at all. I was purely thinking of chord tones and intervals, right? Now, why do scales suck and intervals rule? It's because when you think about chord tones and intervals, you're going to be thinking a lot more closely about the chords that you're playing over. When you play scales, you tend to play a lot of formulaic, pattern-based runs rather than thinking about the notes. And that's why they don't always sound as fitting as chord tone-based soloing. So we're going to look at this today. We're going to analyse the solo and talk about what I was thinking when I came up with it. It's not improvised, it's something I wrote. And the most important thing is to think, right, what was he thinking? Why is he doing that? You know, often when I see players play, it's not so much what they're doing, it's why they're doing it. It's what's going through their heads that is the most important thing, because that's what I want to know, because I want to emulate that. So let's go right from the start. So at the start, I'm doing this. Now this is major pentatonic, okay? I am thinking major pentatonic scale, and all I'm doing is a little walk into beat 1. So this is the bar before beat 1. Yeah, and it's very much a linear scale-based run, because that's the sound I want. I want a little walk into the melody, right? I don't want it to sound massively melodic. I want it to sound like a journey into beat 1. So when I'm doing that, okay, from now on, I'm just thinking about chord tones and intervals. So what am I thinking here? I'm thinking minor third to major third, and then root. Yeah. So now I'm into it. Now I'm into beat 1 of bar 1. Then I'm going. So what am I thinking here? I'm thinking, there's my root. I'm thinking flat 7, 6, 5. Flat 7 and 5 are chord tones. My 6 is like a joining note, right? It's sort of a bit of glue between them. It's the middle of the sandwich, if you like. Now what I'm thinking here is, I'm now seeing my D chord. I'm now in bar 2. So I'm thinking about my D chord. I'm seeing this D note. Right, I'm doing a semitone below into it, and then going down to this note. You might think, why is he going to A? Well, because the A is the 5th of the D, right? So it's a chord tone of the D. So all to do with chord tones. Now it's going down to A, so I'm going to follow it down like this. Right? Right, so I'm doing a chromatic walk down from the 5 of the A. So this is the 5 here. It's the major third. Major thirds are really cool to hit. You know, hitting a major third on beat 1 of when you go to a new chord, it's always going to work. Now I'm leaving quite a bit of space. Yeah, leaving space is good. Then the A chord is now on bar 4, and it's about to move to the D chord on bar 5. Now, this is what we call a resolving dominant chord, right? It's resolving down a 5th from the A to the D. So that means I can play altered lines over this. I've gone over this before in some of my other videos, because it's kind of unstable. So we can play some kind of weird notes. So the altered line is this. Right? Now the notes are coming from the altered scale. It's quite a nice pattern as well, so it's quite easy to play, right? But the important thing is, one of the important things is the destination. The destination is here. What is the destination? You guessed it, right? It's the 3rd of the next chord. The next chord is D. Yeah, so this is the 3rd of the D chord. right? And I'm playing triplets. I'm going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Timing is super important here. If I land on this note too early, it's going to sound like I've gone to the D chord too early. If I land on it too late, it's going to sound like I've missed the D chord. So I've worked this out. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, bump. And it lands perfectly on beat 1 of bar 5, which is the D chord, right? The 4 chord. Now I'm here. Now I'm playing a, think of a D9 chord like this, a rootless D9 chord, which also happens to be F sharp minor 7 flat 5, but let's leave that for another time. And then I'm doing this. I'm thinking of this D chord here, look. Moving up to that major third again. Now you should have figured out what I'm doing by now because I did it before. I'm doing a little walk down to get to the A. I'm doing that over the A again. So I've got... Yeah? So it's all about connecting these things together. It's what some players call playing through the changes, right? I'm connecting the chords together. I'm not just treating the chords separately. When I'm on the A, I'm thinking, how am I going to get to the D? When I'm on the D, like that, how am I going to get to the A? So we've got... Okay, and then I went... So what's that? Major third? Woo! I love these major thirds. So I'm doing a chromatic walk down from the major third to the minor third to the 2. And then landing on the flat 7, okay? So now the chord is going to E. So I'm just going to outline the E chord like this. Now, because it's a resolving dominant chord, I can use an altered line. So I'm outlining the chord there, and then this is a chromatic line leading down to the E, right? So I'm walking down to the E, and I'm playing the sharp 9, the 9, the flat 9. You know, so I'm outlining that altered idea. Then it goes down to the D chord, and I'm playing this. So again, I'm thinking of this D shape here, right? There's that major third again. So minor third to major third. That's the 5. And I'm walking down from 3 to flat 3 to 2, and then actually the major 7th into the root. Now that major 7th is quite an awkward note to use over the blues, but if I'm using it in the context that I'm resolving a semitone up into a root note, it sounds cool. All right. And then finally, I go to a little bit of minor pentatonic over the end. And then right at the end, I just went. All right. So what I'm doing there is a chromatic enclosure around the root note. So a semitone above, semitone below, roots. Typically you get this, don't you? So it's just a bit different. Okay. So over the whole thing, you can see that I'm not thinking pentatonic scales at all. I'm thinking about the chord tones constantly. And you will have noticed that most of the time, I tend to be thinking about thirds a lot because thirds are really, really strong. Yeah. So when I'm thinking about like an A chord, I'm thinking about a line that will get me down to the next chord. I'm thinking about the third of the next chord. So I'm targeting that note. Yeah, I might do a line like that. You know, I'm playing A major bass lines. I'm thinking about this chord and these chord tones, and then doing a little walk down to get down to that major third of the D. When I'm over the chord, I'm thinking chord tones and intervals, but I'm always thinking, what's the next chord and how do I get there, right? I've got to create a path to get to a chord tone of the next chord, typically the major third. Now, I'm not just playing chord tones. I'm also playing what we call tension tones. So on a dominant 7th chord, you've got the 1, you've got the 3, you've got the 5, and you've got the flat 7, okay? Those are your chord tones. Now, the tension tones are notes that are a tone above the chord tones. So if we go a tone up from the 1, we've got the 2. So that's in there as well. Then we've got the 4. Now, the 4 is a semitone above the 3. So it's not a tension tone. It's actually what's called an avoid note, right? It clashes with the 3. So you have to be a little bit careful with the 4, right? You don't want to sort of land a phrase on it. It's okay to play as a passing note. Then we've got the 5, tone above that, 6. So the 6 is a tension tone. Then we got the flat 7. So if you put those notes together, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. What's that? It's a Mixolydian scale, right? So a Mixolydian scale is the chord tones of a dominant chord plus a 2, a 4, and a 6, right? The 2 being a tension tone, the 4 being an avoid note, and the 6 being a tension tone. So most of the time, you want to play 1, 3, 5, flat 7, right? Add in 2s and 6, and be a little bit careful with the 4. So when I'm doing this, right? What am I thinking about? I'm thinking root, 3, 5, 6, 5, 3, root, flat 7. Yeah, and then maybe 5, chromatic line down. Those notes are going to work really well. So most of the time I'm playing chord tones, but then I'm adding in tension tones just to create a bit more colour. Then sometimes chromatic walk downs like that to get down to a chord. It might be if I'm targeting the D, I'll be going, yeah. So chromatics are a really good way of creating these little paths between the chords, of moving from one chord to another. You're moving from a chord tone of the chord that you're on, chromatically down to a chord tone of the chord that you're targeting, basically. So here, this is the root note of the A, yeah? And chromatically, I'm going down to the major third of the D. So that creates this movement. It sounds like the chord is pulling to the next chord, which is a lot better than just jumping straight from one to the other, because that's not smooth, right? So lots of stuff to think about there. You need to experiment with this stuff. It takes a long time. The solo I play at the start, it's not fast. It's not technically hard to play, but there's a hell of a lot of thinking going on behind that sort of stuff, you know, and that's what makes it sound cool, you know, and I really love that sort of stuff. To me, every note in that solo is spot on, right? It's in exactly the right place. It's doing something. It's either creating a little melody line, targeting chord tones, enhancing the chord, or it's creating this movement down to the next chord. And all that combined makes it sound really good, makes it sound really cool. But don't expect this stuff to happen overnight. It won't, right? You've got to spend time thinking about it. And start simply. You know, you could start, one thing you could do is just put on a 12-bar backing track over a major blues and just try to find the thirds, yeah? So you're playing around, where's the third of the A there? Let's find the third of the D. Oh, there's one there. Back to the third of the A, third of the E, third of the D, third of the A. Now I'm going to put some lines around that. Okay. Yeah, you're just thinking about where you're going, but it requires brain power. Yeah, it doesn't require muscle power. It requires brain power, and sometimes that's harder than the muscle power thing. Okay, so please remember to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. All super important. So hope you really enjoyed that, and catch you next time.